Hello, and welcome back to the Paperback Romance Book Club. I am your host, Melissa Haskett. Today's episode 2, Chapter 2, is titled, "This Would Make a Great Hallmark Movie." You know those books that we read and you're just like, yep, I can see Lifetime making this into a movie, or Hallmark making this into a movie, or a TV show, or just one of those, just feel-good movies that is predictable, has some twists, mostly predictable. It just, it's just you walk, when you're done reading it, you're just, warm fuzzies, and you're just like, yeah, I just kind of needed that nice, easy read that's not too complicated. Yeah, that's what today's story is. It's just a very good, feel-good book that I definitely could see Hallmark or Lifetime making into a movie. Yeah. So, real quick, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who listened to the first episode. Everybody who has started following the podcast on Instagram. There is a Facebook page, also Paperback Romance Book Club and the podcast. There is also now a Goodreads book club that I will be updating here this weekend. I will put up the last Highlanders Time trilogy that I did for episode 1. I will be putting up this book and the rest of the books in the series. There's 8 books total in this series, but I'm not going to be talking about 8 books. And then books to come, and then books to read. So, without further ado, I just wanted to say that I thank you. And it's kind of hard to believe that I am recording a second episode. So, yeah, I still have to teach my mom how to find the podcast. And I just introduced her to podcasts like 3 weeks ago. And she's like, she texted me. I told her this week. I said, well, I started a podcast. And she goes, oh, really? Like, she doesn't really quite still understand podcast. And I said, yeah. I said, we're talking about books. And she goes, oh. She goes, horror books? I'm like, no, romance novels. And she just goes, really? Huh. So, I do love a good scary book. I mean, I was that kid that was reading Amityville Horror and The Exorcist and Salem's Lot all throughout elementary school, middle school, high school. Give me a good vampire any day. Seriously, any day. Give me a good vampire story. Anne Rice, this is shout out to her because I'm sure she would never listen to this, but she is my favorite. But I seriously only had to pick one author to ever read again, and I know it's not a romance novel, or anything like that. I seriously would only read Anne Rice, and I think that's all I only read in middle school and high school was Anne Rice. Interview with the Vampire. Oh. And I found, the first thing I did is I watched the movie, and then I found out it was a book, and then that just started it. And I found this copy of Interview with the Vampire. I think it's probably a first edition at a garage sale for like 50 cents. And whoo, there we go. But no, Mother, I will be not talking about vampires. I could talk about vampires. I seriously could. I could have a whole vampire podcast. Maybe someday I will, because that just fascinates me. But I have plans for the vampire romance novels. Don't you worry. So no, when I told my mom I started a romance novel podcast, she just was like, okay, like, I don't understand, but I'm just going to nod my head and kind of smile nervously. Because she reads a lot of, if my mom can find, she can find any free Kindle book that's not like Kindle Unlimited, free Kindle books, she is on it. And that's, a good chunk of the free Kindle books are, romance novels and romance, short stories and things like that. So she gets it, and that's the whole other thing is this is a beginner's guide to our mother's books, and I know when I was younger, I know my mom read. I never really, we read a lot of books together. Whatever my brother was reading, he's 4 years older than me. We would just kind of read together. So, we read a lot of, The Hobbit. And then I remember telling her, I like this book. And I remember when my brother was done with it for school, I remember getting his copy. And, because there were some books that she was just very adamant that we owned and didn't get from the library. We think we checked them out, but I remember buying my brother a copy of The Hobbit. And this is, oh man, I don't know. I was in 3rd grade. My brother was in 6th grade. 7th grade. 7th grade. And I just remember that green paperback book. Just crazy, but she read a lot of that to us, or with us. She read, I remember her reading Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass. She loves a good Edgar Allan Poe book, but my mother also just really loves a good free Kindle romance book. And she's just always reading something like that. And they're kind of, they're just interesting. So hopefully I have plans to get her on here to talk about some stuff. And hopefully we can do that. If she can figure out how to listen to this without me telling her, okay, you go to here. And then you hit the subscribe button, Mom. And then I was gonna ask you for a notification. You're gonna say yes. So every Friday, you can listen to the episode. And might let out a, curse word here and then, and she's gonna text me, oh, you shouldn't swear. Well, I got that from you, so there's that. New podcast, Mothers and Daughters, talking about how they shouldn't swear, but how swearing feels good. Yeah, just let it happen. Anyways, this is episode 2 of the Paperback Romance Book Club. How fun. How fun. Today's episode, this would make a great Hallmark movie. Today's book is The Homesteader's Sweetheart, a Wyoming legacy novel by Lacey Williams. You can find it free for Kindle Unlimited, or it's $2.99. It is the first book of the Wyoming Legacy series, which is a historical romance. This is the first book. There's 8 books total. Each book follows a different child, or the rest of the children of the White family. That's their last name. And if you do, there is a author email subscriber thing at the end. You do that, you get a 45-page short story. I believe it's called Brianna's Story or something like that. But I have not read it yet. I will read it and I will report back, because there is a story within the story that never really gets resolved in this book. So I'm really hoping that in the 45 pages we learn the truth. So let's get into it. So, Wyoming Territory, summer of 1890. Fun fact, Wyoming became an official state in July 10th, 1890. So it's just right around that time when, it's in the wild, wild west. I can, without giving too much information, I live in North Dakota, and it is still the freaking wild, wild west, especially where we live. Everybody drives a pickup truck, and everybody has like mud on that pickup truck. They may not live in the country, but everybody just has mud on their trucks. We also just kind of got torrential rains the other day, and there's technically a flood warning. Maybe there's a flood warning still. But everybody has like lifted pickup trucks, and it's ridiculous. I mean, my husband and I, when we first started dating, before all of kids and stuff, we had a you could say whirlwind romance, but he lived like 10 miles out of our last little town we lived in, little town. And he lived in the country, and at the time when we started dating, I had a little cute orange Honda Fit. I miss that car so much. Couldn't use it now because, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I could get 3 kids in there, but our double stroller's freaking huge. So we had, well, we still do, this big old 80s lifted pickup truck, and my husband is a mechanic, welder person, and we took this this big old pickup truck, and its license plate is Yeti, and it does. It sounds like a Yeti when it runs. But there's a snorkel on it. And I asked him, I said, well, on our first day we took this, and he took me through all the fields and stuff like that of people. I mean, our neighbors and stuff, like not just random people's fields. Because there's like, you can drive through fields, but there's like a road in the fields because they need to get the combines and tractors and stuff out there. So there's like designated prairie roads, prairie drives, prairie roads. I don't know. That's what we did for our first date, and then we went into the back part of his acreage and drank Jack Daniels and stargazed. And then we saw a few, shooting stars. And then there was a grasshopper in one of an empty beer can. And oh my god. So it's really quiet, and we can hear the coyotes, and we can hear some baby coyotes, and it's the freaking cutest thing ever. And he's just like, yeah, sure, it's cute. Like, I have no idea about living in the country. I'm just like, oh, coyotes and baby coyotes. And then we hear this like can sound. And we think like, he's like, so that might be a mouse. Like, I'll just scoot it out of the truck. And I'm just like, okay. And, I'm trying to put on like a brave face, like, no, I'm not. I totally get it. I can be a country girl, and I'm like, I just moved from a huge city back to North Dakota, and here is a freaking dragonfly. Scared him more than me. So there we go. But my husband and I have known each other since 7th grade. So it's not like we were two complete strangers. And he also made his intentions very clear in his first text when he found out that I was back in the state and single. And the first thing he texted me was, "Hi, it's Patrick." And I can see this on like Facebook Messenger. Patrick Haskins. I want to marry you someday. And then it's just like long ramble. But like that's the very first thing he says is, I want to marry you. I don't care how long it takes. I have been in love with you since he says he's not been in love with me since 7th grade. But I'm like, well, your message said you were. So anyways, that's off topic. That could be a whole, I could talk about that because it's just kind of romantic. And it took me 3 days to respond because I was like, we went on one date and then you never talked to me again. And then I say, no, you were in the Marine Corps and other stuff. So it took me 3 days to respond. And all I said was, let's start with drinks first. And then, yeah, the rest is history. So, back to our story. Not my story. The homesteader sweetheart. It's just kind of funny because I told him the title. I told my husband the title of this book. And he goes, oh, he's like, it's kind of like what you were to me. And I was like, well, you weren't really a homesteader. You're just kind of a crotchety old young man in the middle of nowhere. He goes, yeah, but you're my sweetheart. And so I was like, oh, everybody all together. Oh. So, The Homesteader Sweetheart, a Wyoming legacy novel by Lacey Williams. It is it's almost 300 pages. It's like 292 pages long. Like I said before, it's free for Kindle Unlimited or $2.99. First book, In the series, there's 8 books total. So, I think I already said that. So, Wyoming Territory, 1890. So we start off with, I'm going to start off with our first love interest. Jonas White is a young homesteader, single dad. He is an all-around good guy. He has this very, very tragic, sad, depressing past that she gets into. I'm not going to get into. I'm just going to tell you. It's really sad. And it's also the reason why he has taken in like 7 kids. And they're all boys, except for one girl who when he found himself in Philadelphia, and he found himself, or was able to become, a bricklayer apprentice, and which, you know, that's a good job. You know, anything, you know, just keep him busy. So his job that he was doing in Philadelphia for this house was next to a finishing school. So basically, if you don't know what a finishing school is, it's where rich, high society people go send their daughters to so that they can make excellent wives. And marry rich guys. And that's about it. So, you know, high society women, young ladies. Anyways. So there is a scandal. One of the girls, young women, girls in this finishing school, becomes pregnant. And he is blamed that he is the father. And our other love interest, in this story, Penny, her real name is Penelope, but I think that's only like mentioned like 2 times. So Penny, she was at this finishing school in Philadelphia, and that is, I mean, she does kind of remember who he is after a while. And she was friends with this other girl who did get pregnant, and so she's just like, kind of like, oh, like, you got my friend pregnant, and so you must be kind of loose and stuff like that. But at the same time, you can't be that loose because you took her in, the daughter. And, you know, so she's like, I don't know what to think of you because you have all these kids and they can't all be yours because, like, you're way too young to have, like, a 16-year-old or whatever. I think it's kind of the age of the oldest boy. And so she's like, I'm kind of confused. But he and this lady, this young girl, were whisked away to Boston, where he was kind of like forced to wait for this girl to give birth. And then it kind of sounds like she confessed to her family finally that Jonas wasn't the father. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're like, here's some money, like, forget about this. And he's like, well, what are you going to do with this baby? And they're like, put it in an orphanage. Duh. And he's like, flashbacks, trauma, childhood trauma. And he was in an orphanage for a little bit before he ran away. And so he's like, no, I will take her. And they're like, well, we're gonna have you sign some legal stuff because we don't want you to come and ask for money. He's like, no, that's fine. Like, you know, I will be her father. Like, as long as you sign over like full custody things and you don't want her back. And they're like, done. Like, why would we want this? You know, like, we still want our daughter to marry in high society. And like, we think we've hushed this up. Like, it sounds like they've hushed it up enough. And they're like, okay, well, here's some money and we will buy you train tickets to just go wherever. And since he's not really from like one place, he's just like, let's go to Wyoming. Like, it just kind of sounds like that. Like, let's just go to Wyoming and just start over. As I fall off the chair. So it's just very heartwarming because it's just like he didn't have to take this girl in, this baby, like days old infant. He didn't have to take her in, and now he's traveling with her, which for any parent out there who's ever traveled with a child, let alone an infant, you know how nightmarish it is. We're flying on Sunday to go to my in-laws, and the flight is only like an hour and a half. So I'm guessing we're going to be on the airplane for maybe a total of 3 hours. You know, everybody getting on and blah, 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 blah. Hopefully. And of course the weather's supposed to be hot and humid, and there's also supposed to be like storms throughout the whole week. So I'm like, perfect. I need my anti-frizz hair stuff now. So you know how nightmarish it is. I flew to Florida with my twins when they were 4 months old, 3 months old. Let's see, May, June, July, 3 months, almost 4 months old. But it wasn't just me, it was me and my mom. But now they're 2, and we have the 6-month-old. Which I think is ridiculous that you have to pay full price for 2-year-old to have. I'm like, they're little. But anyways, I'm back on topic. And to parents, it's okay. I have been thinking about and planning everything for the airplane for about a month now since our tickets were booked. So it's a nightmare. And not to mention, like, I don't think he really knows how to deal with a baby because no one knows how to deal with babies. You know, like realistically, like your first child or children, how many of you ever have the first time? Like, you don't know what you're doing. You know, like you may take a parenting class and they like, you may know how to get through labor. That's a lie. But traveling on train from Boston to Wyoming in the 1800s, nightmare. So anyways, he picks up the first, or I guess the second kid, first boy, and he's about to get thrown off this train because he doesn't have a ticket. And with this money that he was given, he pays for this boy's ticket, and it's just like, hey, just, you know, chill out, sit with me and my daughter. Like, I just, you know, he kind of just sees like himself in him. And by the time they get to Denver, Colorado, he has convinced this boy to just come work for him, live with him in Wyoming to get his homestead up. And he's like, you know, if you don't like it in a few months, you can leave. Like, I understand. He's like, I just need help. I need, you know, like, I just need a good pair of hands and I can teach you stuff. And this kid, you know, kind of same background as him, you know, has probably been in an orphanage, on the streets, just wandering. So, and they get into Denver, and that's where he meets his second son, so the third kid. And he's just crying and no one's looking at him. And that's exactly like what he says. And it's just heartbreaking. And he finds out that this boy's parent they've died like 3 days before. And they go to a judge, and the judge grants Jonas like full parental custody, adoption, what have you, for this other boy. So by the time he gets to Wyoming, he has like 3 kids, which, you know, is interesting in its own fact. And like also the fact that he has like no idea where he's gonna go. He's just like, I know Wyoming sounds like a fun idea. And if you've ever been to Wyoming or driven through Wyoming, it takes forever because there's nothing there. It's beautiful in some parts, but at the same time, oh. But getting to, it doesn't really say how he found the land or whatever, but he sets up his homestead. He kind of builds his house, or there's a house there, and he kind of builds on it, what have you. So he starts homesteading. He has cows. We learn that he does cows, and he bales hay, has horses, has his own like garden, chickens. Homesteading 101. His neighbors are far enough but close enough that, like, you know, they just need to ride their horse for a little bit and they're there, and they can, you know, it seems like there's like a hill that kind of like they can't really see, but if they stand to, you know, side or on the roof, I don't know, whatever, they can see them but they can't see them, like how neighbors should be. When we lived in the country house, our closest neighbor was like 2.5, 3 miles away. We could still see his house. And our coon dog knew that she went over to John's, she would get a cookie, and that's what she did. She would go over there every morning and get a treat, and then you just see her trotting back in the ditch. Just, yep, I went over to John's and I got a cookie. Our little country coon dog. She doesn't really know how to bay, and it's really funny. And she makes friends with raccoons. She's not a very good coon dog. That's okay. So, anyways, so his neighbors help him out a lot. They help out with the baby, with Brianna, the daughter. She also has seizures, which, I mean, not even just talking about in the 1800s, but like seizures are scary. I remember a girl in one of my, I think it was speech classes in high school, that had severe epilepsy, and like at the beginning of the school year, like the first or second day of class, like she had to demonstrate what everybody needs to do if she does have a seizure. Like, it's that serious where you kind of, I know a lot of people want to keep their illnesses to themselves as best as they can because no one really wants pity of, oh, I have this disease or, I have cancer. Like, no one really wants to say stuff like that out loud. Unless you are one of those few people, but that's a whole other conversation. So, there's medicine now, and there's treatments, but like in the 1800s, like, it's kind of like voodoo doctors and things like that, where they're just like, yeah, here's some snake oil, it's gonna cure your seizures, and you're gonna have to give me like $1 billion, and no one has any money. So Jonas has to go to this big town, Clearwater, I think is the big one that he has to go to. And he's going there for two purposes. One, because his neighbor was like, hey, if you're going to this town, I need you to drop off this letter to my family. I'm kind of sick. And so he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll drop it off for you. And then he's like, while I'm there, I can get this loan because I found somebody that is going to cure my daughter's seizures and stuff like that. But I need a lot of money for it. And travel and blah, 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 blah. And that's how we come to meet our other love interest, Penny. Castle Rock. So Penny, like you said before, she was in this finishing school in Philadelphia, and she didn't secure a husband, which is like she failed. Like, basically, like, she failed finishing school because, like, I'm assuming they did a debutante thing, and, for debutantes, all I know is from, like, the Gilmore Girl episode is your escort pretty much becomes your husband, or you meet your husband at these things. But she did not secure a husband because she wants love. Which I'm just like, good for you. Which I'm like, but at the same time, I mean, it really does sound like her dad isn't the greatest. And she definitely, like, kids see things. Let's just say that. Kids see everything. And she, like, sees that her mom, like, is not happy, is obviously not in love with her dad. And she's just like, yeah, I don't want that. I want to be in love. And I want that to be the first thing in a marriage. And her parents are like, you failed finishing school. You will take whoever you can get. I mean, they don't say it quite like that, but it's kind of like that. So Jonas comes. He's kind of kicked out of this party they're having. Her dad is a banker, like, owns the bank, so he's quite wealthy. She reads the letters from her grandfather. He's sick, and she's like, oh, grandpapa. She doesn't say grandpapa. I just kind of want her to say, grandpapa is sick. I must go to him. Because her dad's like, you're going to marry my business partner, and that's going to be that, because you are my property, and I can do with you as I please. And she's like, he's a creep, and I overheard some creepy things he was saying. No, thank you. And she's like, again, I want to marry for love, not for money. but she's also like, I like myself puffy dresses, like, and I like having tea and coffee and going shopping and having, new clothing made for the season. Like, woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Like, you must be rich, but I must love you first. Which I'm just like, okay, you work on that. So yeah, so she's just like, oh no, grandfather is sick. We must go to him. And she's like, avoiding responsibilities, but like, good intention type of doing that. So she's like, my brother and I will go take care of grandfather. And that guy who came here last night, he's his neighbor. So we're going to get a ride from him. And he's going to take us to grandfather. And bye. She literally is like packing like a few things and is like, okay, this is the plan, brother, get your stuff together, we're going now, like now. And her mom's just like, what? And I honestly think like her mom like doesn't really give a shit at this point, because she's just like, I'm unhappy, I don't care, whatever, like, for all I care, you've ruined yourself because you didn't secure a husband in Philadelphia. There's like a really gross bug. Ugh. So she and her brother go to Philadelphia, or not to Philadelphia. They find the farmer. His daughter Brianna is with him. And they start off for this journey. It takes them like a full day to get there. And Brianna has a seizure. And we kind of find out that a lot of people, like, Brianna doesn't get to go to school because she had what the school mistress said, an episode, and it's just so distracting, and it's very hurtful, it's very mean. So she doesn't get to go to school, and because she doesn't get to do a lot of things, because people just don't understand, like, she's not doing this on purpose. And so he's kind of like, Jonas is very quick to be like, guards up, like, this high society woman is going to think less of all of us already, even more, because my daughter's having a seizure and stuff. But instead, Penny's like taking care of her, like being very motherly, and like she kind of catches on like that Jonas isn't married, and they kind of talk, and she's like, oh yeah, now I remember you from Philadelphia. And so that's when she forms an opinion. She's like, oh, well, you must not have any morals, but you must, because you've taken care of this poor sick child, when a lot of parents would just, be like, well, you're sick, you can't help, off to the orphanage with you. So, she's just like, I'm confused on what you do, who you are. So they help their grandfather. Penny learns that she can't cook. Imagine that, because that's not what finishing school does. And she finds out that her grandparents are the ones that, help Jonas and stuff with, his children, and with Brianna when she was, a baby. Her grandmother's now passed. But she's just like, no, I want to love like my grandparents. Like, they're just so in love. Not like my parents. And she ends up, like, they end up eating at Jonas's house, like, every day, because she's, like, caught the kitchen on fire. And Jonas is like, well, I can't help repair that right now. And her brother It's like 13 or 14 and just very spoiled, like, you know, they're high society, so they've never had to do any real work in their life. So he gets to learn how to do stuff, you know, how to be like a cowhand and all of that. Like, it's very good for him. My husband has said this, that like their boys just need hard work, which I get. I mean, I never really got that, and now I have 3 boys, and I'm just like, I can't wait for the day I can throw you guys outside and just, okay, come in for what? Like, you know, I mean, I don't think you can do that anymore. In the 90s you could. But, like, he grows up, and it's very good. Like, he's not entitled, which I'm just like, well, that's what a lot of kids need these days, is just to be thrown on a homestead. Penny learns how to do other basic things. She's learned how to sew before, and she like realizes, like, you know, Jonas doesn't really have a lot of money. She's able to get new fabric and like sews all these children. Like, so she sews a new dress for Brianna, matching shirts for the boys, like, and a matching shirt for Jonas. Like, it's just like, it's a thank you gift. Like, thank you for like teaching my brother this. Thank you for like feeding us. Kind of like taking us in underneath your wing. And they do kiss. Oh, it's so magical. And it's just a really funny moment. It's just kind of like you are like, after, you know, and she's kind of giving the boys this like she plays the mother role without realizing she's playing the mother role. But obviously, like, Jonas and the boys and Brianna have like, we need this. Like, we needed this because there's not, since her grandmother's passed away, there's no, you know, woman around or anything like that. And so Penny has also realized that, and she's, you know, with Brianna being the only girl out of all these boys, she's just like, well, I will, you know, she teaches one of the boys how to read because he's too old to go to school. And then she kind of realizes, like, Jonas doesn't know how to read because, you know, she kind of learns of his past too. And he tells her about how he's found all the boys, you know, kind of a Brianna. She does find out that he's not the biological father. He didn't cause the scandal. And she's just like, oh, well, it's okay for me to feel this way about you then. Like, it's not going to be so morally, you know, disrupt or something because, like, you had a child out of wedlock or something like that. But then they're at this barn raising thing, which I'm just like, this sounds fun. We need to do this. This couple, they just got married and they don't have a barn. So everybody in this community comes together and the women cook, and it's kind of like a big old potluck, and the men like build a barn and put this barn together in like a day, which I'm just like, that sounds fun. Why don't we do that? And I'm just like, oh, it's construction companies. But I'm just like, no one built us a barn when we got married. Huh. Just kidding. So at this barn raising thing, she's also been helping the boys talk to girls that they do like, and like how to do it appropriately. And she like also finds out that this is before her and Jonas kiss, that like Jonas has never kissed anybody or anything like that. So like how would he know? And like the boys just don't talk to their dad about that kind of thing. So she's just like, well, we don't steal kisses. Which I'm just like, once more for the people in the back. We don't steal kisses. You yeah. But then her father's business partner, Mr. Abbott, shows the F up. And before that, weird things have kind of been happening, and like just little weird, they're just kind of creepy, and she doesn't really think anything of it because she just thinks it's one of the boys kind of playing pranks, you know, and kind of like a defense thing. She's like, I get it, whatever. But then the field, Jonas is like half of his field catches on fire. And anybody who knows a farmer or a rancher or anybody, like, a fire is no joke. A fire in the 1890s, rural Wyoming, is no freaking joke. Because he's like, we need to get this hay harvested and all that before winter, or we will not survive. Like, our cattle will not survive. And he's also taken on responsibility for his farm, his other neighbor's farm, because he's going to get paid for it. And it catches on fire. Like, I think like half of it catches on fire. And here, this Mr. Abbott has like followed Penny and her brother to her grandfather's and has been doing all these things and started the fire. But of course there's no proof, but he's just like trying to like forcibly take her, and is like, it's basically like ready to like throw her over his shoulder and be like, you're coming with me, like we're gonna go get married right now, I have it all set up. And she's like, hell no. And like Jonas kind of sees them talking, and then he's just like all disheartened. He's like, okay, well, these feelings I had for her, that's silly, because obviously here's this like well-to-do guy, she's gonna go marry him. And he's just kind of like, okay, I'm moving on. Like right then and there, he's like, I'm moving on. And then his like sons come up, and he's like, they're like, Penny is with this guy, and he's like, I know. And they're like, no, she didn't. He's like forcing her to like, is like, she's trying to fight it. And they're like, we can't do this like by ourselves and stuff like that. Like, they're smart. They're like, we need an adult. So Jonas goes, and he's just like, yo, she doesn't want to be with you. Like, stop being an ass. And he's like, and yeah, it's just crazy. But then Penny and her brother do go back to their town, and because she kind of like was like, well, I guess Jonas doesn't like me or whatever, like that's fine. And there's some very nice like heart-to-heart conversations with her grandfather about it. And you know, and he doesn't say like, you know, I really do admire, you know, like the person you've become, you know, and like, you know, you look out for your brother, and you know, like look at the person he's like became on this like month being here. And so she goes back. There's a very big twist. Jonas comes back and he's like, and this is like my favorite thing. He's like, I'm coming to ask your father permission to court you. Like, I want to marry you, but we need to get to know each other. And it's just so beautiful. And it's just so like, oh, like, he wants to marry you, but he realizes like, oh, I love it. So that is The Homesteader's Sweetheart, a Wyoming legacy novel by Lacey Williams. I full-heartedly give this a 5 out of 5. I highly recommend it. I would definitely buy it for the $2.99. And if I did not have a list of other books that I really want to get through in the next few weeks, I would just sit here and read all 7 of them. If you like a very good, heartfelt Hallmark Lifetime movie type historical romance, you will love this book. Just go find it. It's beautiful. Thank you for listening to the Paperback Romance novel, or Paperback Romance Book Club, with me, Melissa Haskins. You can find us on Facebook at the Paperback Romance Book Club, the podcast. Find us on Instagram. Again, thank you everybody who has been following, liking, at Paperback Romance Book Club. You can also find, and I will put a link to the Goodreads Book Club page on Instagram and as well as on the Facebook page. And that's also Paperback Romance Book Club. I've also started a Patreon page because there's a lot of things I want to do and I want to do for you guys. I just need a little help. And that's also Paperback Romance Book Club, the podcast. Here are some of the tiers. There's a few of them. And of course for Patreon, if you just want to make like a one-time donation, that's fantastic. If you want to do a monthly donation, that's even better. It's all up to you. You get gifts of my appreciation. So the first tier is $2 a month. That is a casual reader. With that, you get a one-time sign-up deal or gift of one book, one sticker, and a bookmark. That's your sign-up gift. And everybody gets a sign-up gift. And then you'll also receive a small gift like every 6 months, as well as access to all the Patreon exclusive stuff. $5 is the librarian, and that is one bookmark or sticker. It's on a rotation monthly, and then you get one book every 3 months. The $10 a month is the book club member. You get a sticker and a bookmark monthly, so you get those, and then you get a book every month or every other month. $15 is a collector. You get